Hi everybody and welcome back to the Creative Kindergarten YouTube channel. My name is Amanda and this is my YouTube channel where I like to put out different episodes talking about different things that I like about kindergarten. And so I have a podcast where I talk a lot about different topics related to kindergarten. I like to use this YouTube channel when it's more about like hands-on things that I want to showcase. But if you are interested in hearing more from me about different things pertaining to kindergarten, make sure you are listening to me over on my Creative Kindergarten podcast. I will put the link for that in the description for you. I put out new episodes every week talking about different kindergarten topics. So make sure you're following me over there as well if you like more content from me. But for today, for this episode of my YouTube channel, what I'm going to be talking to you about is Google Jamboard and how it is a great tool or a great platform to use for brick and mortar classrooms or for your virtual spaces. So I hope you stick around and learn a bit more about Google Jamboard. First thing, where do you find Google Jamboard? Well, Google Jamboard is part of the Google Suites um, array of like different platforms that you can use. So you know how you can use like Google Docs or you can use Google Sheets or Google Slides. Google Jamboard is just one of those options that you can use. So to get to my Google Jamboard, I go to my waffle in my Chrome and I scroll down until I see Jamboard. So you see slides and I have Jamboard right there. What Jamboard is, it's basically a virtual whiteboard. So like you would have a whiteboard in your classroom where you write on, you erase, you put things on, students can interact with it. Google has put together a virtual whiteboard that you can use to interact with and that you can share with your students, that you can save and that you can copy over and do lots of different things too. And as you can see from all the files that I currently have in my Google Jamboard, I really love to use it. And it's just such a great space for students. And I'll show you exactly why I think that. So I'm just going to open, well, I guess what I should show you is just how to create one from scratch. I just go to the little plus button at the bottom right hand screen and it creates a whole new Jamboard. It starts off with basically a blank whiteboard. So if you were talking with your students and you have inquiry or questions or things that you want to add to a whiteboard, you can just open up a new whiteboard and get started right away. There's no like setup involved or anything like that. It's just ready to go. And so when you open up a new Jamboard, you'll see that there are options on the left hand side of the screen. What I like about Jamboard, as opposed to using something like Google Slides, because they're kind of similar, with Google Slides, you have a whole bunch of information on the screen. So it can get quite distracting to students. They can click on the wrong thing or they might not be able to find something. There's just too many options for kindergarten students. Whereas in Google Jamboard, they've really simplified it down to the basic tools that you need in order to do things with your students. And that's what I really like about it. They've kind of taken away that noise of all the stuff that surrounds it and really just pared it down to exactly what students would need so that especially kindergarten age students aren't like messing things up all the time or getting frustrated because they can't find something. The basic tools that they have, a pen, and if you click on it, you'll see that there are different options for pen sizes or pen types and different colors. Again, very pared down. There's not like a million choices for them to pick from, which is good because then they're not like overwhelmed or clicking on the wrong thing. Then of course, an eraser. And then this is just the cursor. So if you put something on the screen and you want to move it around or change something, you would use the cursor. One of my favorite things is you can put a sticky note, and these sticky notes are fantastic for students to add to their own thinking to the jam itself. I've just created one with a question mark on it, and you can just move it around. Students can add their names to it. I'll show you some examples of some activities in a second, but that's just a really great way for students to be able to add their information onto a slide. You can also add images. You can upload your own images from your computer, or you can even search the web. So let's say you're doing an activity around like a letter of the day and you're doing the letter A, and you can ask students, find something that starts with the letter A, and you can direct them to do a Google image search, and they can find things like an apple or an astronaut, and they can add those images into the jam. So you're like collectively creating like a chart, or you're collectively creating this whiteboard that students can add their own information to quite easily, and it becomes a collaborative space that everybody can work on. There's also some really basic shapes that students can add. Again, not overwhelming in choice, which is really important. And text boxes, if you do want to add text boxes, and there's different sizes and colors that you can choose from for the color of the text. And then I like also this laser pointer. So if you want to circle something that's on there, but you don't want it to stay, you can kind of just laser it and it'll disappear. So let's say you have the word cat and we're learning how to stretch out the word cat. You can underline each letter, cat, and then that way students can see what you're doing, but you're not having to add or take away anything on the whiteboard itself because you're just using the little laser pointer. So, and that's it. Those are the options that students have. So though it might seem like, oh, there's not a lot of options, it's actually, I think, something that's really good and really great for students because they're able to interact with it and add their own learning and their own thinking to a Jamboard without getting overwhelmed again with choice. Now, if you create a Jamboard and you'd like to share it with your students, there's a few ways that you can share your Jamboard with students. By going to the share button over here, you'll see that when you go to share with people in groups, you can get the link and then it's automatically set that anybody with the link can view. That means that students will be able to see what you're doing on the Jam, they'll be able to see the content on the Jam, but they won't be able to edit or change anything themselves. They're just a viewer. If you change this to editor, anybody who you give that link to, any students you give that link to, will be able to edit all on the same Jam. So if you give that link to 20 students can go into that Jamboard and start editing and adding their thoughts to it. That is a great way to work collaboratively with a group of students. But just like any other routine in a kindergarten classroom, I would definitely set up rules and expectations to what that looks like beforehand, because you don't want students going in there and changing and deleting things that are not theirs. So teaching them about the back button to fix a mistake is a really great way to show them like, hey, we all make mistakes, but like this is how you fix it. If you delete something by accident, make sure you undo it. Talking to them about only adding or changing their own word instead of changing somebody else's word, and just things like that. I would definitely set up those expectations and have them have like a chance to just explore and play with a Jam on their own before you start doing anything that would involve them sharing their thinking. Like I would just let them go into a Jam and play around with all of the different options so that they know what to do. You can even make a game out of it, like who can type their name on a sticky note, who can write their name with a pen, like who can create a circle. Like just make a game out of it and see how they're interacting with the Jamboard and talk to them about those rules and expectations in like a fun, silly way before you get into more like more task-oriented learning that you could do with or collaborative learning that you could do with a Jamboard. So those are the two different ways that you can share it out of the Jam itself. I will also show you later how to share it within a Google Meet and a Google Classroom, but for now I'm just sticking with within the platform itself. Those are the two ways that you can share it. You can also, there's a third way, and I completely forgot about this, you can also force copy a link for students to use. So if you have anyone the link can view and you copy this link here, you can force copy so that anybody who clicks on the link for the Jamboard will it'll create their own copy of that Jamboard in their Google Drive. So that way you can share a Jamboard with colleagues, or you can have students create their own Jamboard on their own and edit their own Jamboard, but you won't be able to see it once it's out there. Once you've given them a forced copy link, like it's theirs, it's in their, unless they share it back with you, you won't be able to see what they do. But I can show you how to do that. So what I do is I copy that link, and then you just have to paste it somewhere. I usually just paste it right back in the toolbar, and right where it says edit, you have to change that word to copy. And then you just re-highlight the whole URL and you copy that and you can share that out. That's a forced copy link, and that'll work also with like a Google Doc or a Google Slide, where you can force people to take a copy instead of being able to edit your own copy. It'll make them theirs. Some other things that you can do with a Jamboard, I like to do a question of the day, and this involves students answering questions by adding their name on a sticky note to something. So you can do this with attendance, or you can have different questions that students can ask. So this one is, do you have a pet? And students can take a sticky note and write their name on it. You can also change the color if they would like. And then once they've added their name, now they can answer the question. And you can have each student do that individually where they create a sticky note, or you can do that for them as they're answering questions. If students have trouble typing out their own name on a sticky note, what you can have is have all the sticky notes with their names populated on the side, and they would just pick their sticky note with their name and place it on the Jamboard. And so that way they can answer their own questions for your question of the day. This is just a really fun way to get some collaborative work done with your students. This question of the day Jamboard template is actually available in my store. I'll put a link in the show notes for you if you don't want to have to like recreate the reel and make your own question of the day templates. I can share that link with you so that you can get your own copy of that. So that's just a really simple way to get a collaborative space going. Another one, this is actually a free template that's on my blog in my resource library. So if this is something that you're interested in, make sure you head over to my blog and go to my resource library, and these templates are available for you to download as a freebie. And this is just a great way to talk about story elements. So after reading a book, you can talk about the setting, the characters, the beginning, middle, and end. There's two different kinds of templates. There's also setting, characters, problem, and solution. And what you can do is either have students work as a whole group where you are inputting their answers. You can use the text boxes, or you can use the sticky notes and you're inputting the students' answer on here. Or you can have it be a collaborative space where all students are able to type their own answers on a sticky note and add it to them. I would just suggest making sure they add their name to it, just so you know who's adding what sticky note. Or you can force copy them a link for them to share their own reading responses after reading a storybook with them. Any way you choose, any way that works for you and your students, is just a great way to work on reading comprehension with your students. And it's just a great way to also work if you're doing it collaboratively. What you can do is just, because there's this actually has multiple templates, so you can pick, it's all the same content. I've just created it with different backgrounds. But what you can do is duplicate it. And so that, let's say one week you're reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar and you talk about the settings and characters and the problem and the solution for The Very Hungry Caterpillar one week. Well, then you can duplicate it over and start with a blank one the next week. And once you get to another book that you're reading, you can talk about it again, but you can also go and revisit what you've talked about previously so that you're not losing all of that work that you've done in the past. You can just keep referencing back to it. So like you would in a classroom, you would have a whiteboard, you'd be writing down their answers, or on a chart paper, you'd be writing down their answers. And next week you want to go back to something somebody said. Well, you're either looking back through chart paper or you've already erased it probably from your whiteboard. Well, with a Jamboard, you don't have to worry about that anymore. It's always there for you to go back to because it's saved into your drive. This is what I really like. And in order to, let's say you really like this particular story elements template, if you click on the three dots, it will duplicate it and it'll make a copy of that over so that you can use it again. So if there is a template that you really like, let's say, because there's lots of them here, let's say you really like this one, what I would do is I would delete all the other ones, keep one as your master copy and keep duplicating it and adding to it every time you read a story, let's say. So yeah, that's just another way to really work on that collaborative skill. Again, you can be whole group, small group, or you can be doing individual learning centers with this as well. This is another one. This is my sight word set, and this would be a great individual activity or a small group activity where we're learning about sight words and we're learning to identify sight words. They have to put little tokens on the sight words that they find. And again, this can be given to your students as a learning activity for them to do on their own when they are focusing in on a certain sight word, or if you are putting together some small groups and you want to be teaching about sight words, you can use this as well. It's really basic. All they do is just find the sight word that is written at the top, and they have to highlight the sight words that they find. And then once they find all of the sight words that are listed, or that is up at the corner there, they have to type how many of them that they found. I think there's 8 on this page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they would just put the number 8 in that text box there to show that they found 8 sight words. And there's 20 different ones on this one. Again, this one is in my store. I can share a link with you for that as well. So these are just some ideas of some of the things that you can use Jamboard for a small group or whole group. What I really like with it now is that before they did an update Jamboard, you had to have like a preset number of backgrounds. So you only had like the dots, the lines, and the colors that you could choose from. So let's say you wanted to do a 10 frame activity, you had to like upload a picture of a 10 frame, and then students could add to the 10 frame with any manipulative that you uploaded to the Jamboard. But now they've created it so you can actually add your own background into the Jamboard so that students can't move the things around that are in that Jamboard. So since that update has happened, it's made it so much more convenient, because before you would put a 10 frame in the background, or you could put a 10 frame that students could use, but then they could delete it, they could move it, they could resize it. Now if you put a 10 frame in the background, like they can't move this anymore. Like that is there permanently for them. What they can do is put things on top of it and interact with it in that way. That makes it just like a really great way for you to make those templates that students can interact with, because they've added that background. Since they've added that background, that's when I really started creating for Jamboard and really started using Jamboard in different ways, just because it just made it so much easier for students to use. And I'm all about how can we make it simple and easy for students to use, so that it's more about the learning that's taking place rather than them getting frustrated with the platform that you're using. So that has been a great update. The next thing I wanted to show you is that Jamboard can actually be used with Google Classroom. So if you are in virtual learning right now and you're using Google Classroom, you can actually use Jamboard in your Google Classroom and assign tasks through the Google Classroom using Jamboard. So anytime I'm trying out new things, I have created like a test classroom in my Google Classroom, and there's no students in it, there's nobody else in it, just mine, and I like to play around with it. I highly suggest, if you want to just play around with Google Classroom, just make yourself a pretend classroom and just play around with it. But you can create an assignment using Jamboard. So by adding it from your Google Drive, there are different options. So let's say you do want them to complete that sight word activity on their own, you would add that into an assignment, and over here you can pick what you have students do with it. So students can view the file. That means that they'll be able to see what's on the Jamboard, but they won't be able to interact with it. Students can edit the file. That means if you assign this to 20 students, all 20 students will be editing the same file, and they'll be able to see the changes that other students make. They can change what other students do. So be careful. Again, talk about routine, expectations and rules before you let that happen. Or you can make a copy for each student, and this will again force a copy for each one of your students so that they have their own work. That's what I would suggest. If it's more of like an assignment thing that they're doing for their learning, I would definitely suggest making a copy for each student, and then when they submit it, you can see the work that they've done on the Jamboard. So again, in Google Classroom, it's really easy to assign a Jamboard in that way. Now the last thing I wanted to show you is in Google Meet, how you can use a Jamboard. So I'm just going to start a random Google Meet. There's not going to be anybody here, it's just me. But I wanted to show you that clicking on the three little dots in the right-hand corner, you can go to the whiteboard, and they've integrated Jamboard in with Google Meet to make it really easy for you to share those Jamboards and to work collaboratively with students. You can start a whole new Jamboard. Let's say you're having a group discussion and you have a really great idea, or they're asking tons of great questions, or there's some really great conversations, or you want to make a graph with your students. You can just pop up a new whiteboard really easily that students can start collaborating on, or you can choose one that's already pre-made. So if you're doing the question of the day, let's say, and you want them to answer the question of the day, you could pick that one for students to go to. So you're going to start a new jam, and what it's going to do, or you could choose one, but you're going to open up a new jam and it's going to automatically make a new one. And then from here, before students start clicking on it, you have to decide if you want students to be able to edit the jam or if you want them to be able to view. Because if you want them to edit it, you have to go into the share settings and change it so that anyone with the link can edit and then save it. And then when students click, because if they've already clicked on it, they'll be in the view mode, so they'll have to come back out and go back in, and they'll be editing access, and then they can add their name. So maybe you want to say, okay, I'm going to put a link for a Jamboard in the chat, just give me 1 second, and then you would then say, okay, you can go to the Jamboard now after you've changed that to the edit link. What's really great, it's shared right in the chat for them, but also if a student has to leave and come back out of the Google Meet, or if a student came in late, they also puts the link in the attachment. So over here where you see the little attachment in the meeting details, you can see that there's an attachment and they can click on it, and no matter when they came into the Google Meet, if they can't see it in the chat or if it gets lost because there's lots of other stuff happening in the chat, they'll be able to go to that little attachment and open up that open up that Jamboard so that they're able to join as well. So I love that they've integrated it in that way. Again, like any new technology, we're learning how to use it, we're learning how to use it appropriately, and you're learning how to interact with it. So, just teaching those skills on how to access it and how to change things on it and how to use it appropriately when we're in a classroom setting will be important, just as we're teaching with any new thing in our classroom as well. So I hope you enjoyed that little tutorial on using Google Jamboard for kindergarten students. I have been having a lot of fun creating different things for it. So what I'll do is I'll put in the description the link to the ones that this Jamboards that I specifically talked about today, but I also put a link for the different Jamboard sections that I have in my Teachers Pay Teachers store. I have a lot of different Jamboard templates that I've created that you might be interested in checking out for yourself, getting some inspiration. It's just been really fun creating for it, just because it's a new platform and I've been really enjoying it, and it's just such a great way to work collaboratively with students and get them engaged in their learning in a virtual space. So it's been a lot of fun. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I don't put out videos very regularly on my YouTube channel, but I hope to get better at that this year. So make sure you are subscribed to my channel so that you're notified whenever I put out new videos. If you did like this video, make sure you hit that like button so that I know that to keep creating videos like this. If you have any questions about Jamboard, or if you have any suggestions for future videos that you'd like to see from me, make sure you leave a comment down below. I love answering your comments and your questions. It's just such a great way to interact with people who watch the videos. Again, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.